So here is part 2 of me explaining the truth. So 7 years ago, I went to Pastor Mark Ragsdale and Pastor Brandon Reib, and I told them great news. There is no battery, there's no violence, there's no domestic violence battery, there's no arguing, there's no fighting. The cops said there was no reason for them to come, nothing happened. They're like, really? And I said, yeah. And I said, let me tell you. I told them the story. Marie and I were hugging and kissing. She starts complaining, little complaints. I sit up and I pretend to play the drums and say, honey, you're beating me like a drum. You're beating me on top of the head like a drum. And when I was doing my little drummer boy thing, my lower right elbow barely touched her and set her off screaming, I'm calling 911, over and over. I went into panic mode, held her down, begging her, baby, please don't call 911, over and over. Well, the cops got there. And the cop said, you know, there was no reason for your wife to call us, Jimmy. Her story matches yours exactly. You were laying on the bed, hugging and kissing. You played the little drummer boy. You spooked her when your elbow barely bumped her. She said it barely bumped her and it was an accident. There's no crimes, Jimmy. And I'm like, thank God. Are you leaving now? And he says, no, it's not that easy. You confessed to 2 crimes. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, when you held her down, the second you touched her, that's considered domestic violence battery. And I'm like, wait a second. I thought domestic violence battery, there had to be bruises, and you had to take pictures, and it showed there was battery. He said, no, those laws have all changed. If you touch someone, you put your hand on someone's shoulder, that's battery. If they don't want you to touch them, it's battery. And I'm like, that is the stupidest law. And he's like, I know, and I'm sorry, but your wife wants to press charges. And here's the worst news, Jim. When you begged her not to call, that's a felony. It's called tampering with a witness. You're being arrested for a misdemeanor domestic violence battery, later I find out punishable by up to 1 year in prison, and a felony, tampering with a witness, which is up to 5 years. So I'm arrested. I think this is no big deal. Come on. No judge is going to prosecute me on something like this. Everyone's calling Maria, drop the charges. What are you doing? What are you doing? You felony charge on your husband for begging you not to call the police. Drop the charges. Pastor Mark Ragsdale said, Maria, press those charges. Yeah, let's get him. Let's get him. And Mark and Maria turned into the lying, evil duo. I would like an investigation into this, and it will soon come. People will investigate. I hope judges watch this and cops watch this, and they go, wow, you pointed out some serious crimes. So Mark Ragsdale, he yelled at me, we voted you out of the church. And then lied to everybody in the church that he didn't lie and do that. But he encouraged my wife to press criminal charges. And he encouraged her to divorce me. Oh, wait a second. We go from laying on the bed, hugging and kissing. If people said, Jimmy, you guys have the happiest marriage. You're always holding hands. And you guys are, we know you're so close. And to go from a wonderful home, Daniel had mommy and daddy 24 hours a day. And Marie and I worked at home selling custom curtains on my websites. And we worked 10 hours a week. We made $100,000 a year. And that was my life. I've always had God's favor on me. I've always made $100,000 a year for 30 years or 25 years, God's favor. And anyway, so here we have the perfect life. We make great money. We're going to Disney all the time and whatever we want to do. And Mark Ragsdale decided to destroy my family with evil deeds. And shame on you, Brandon Reib. You're standing there watching Mark lie and then cover his lies and more lies and file an injunction. And what the fuck is up with you guys? You guys have lost your minds. You have lost your minds. It's called repent, Mark. It's called stand in front of your church and say, okay, 7 years ago, Jim Butler came to me with a tiny little thing. I could have easily snuffed it and his family would have been perfect. That's the truth. but I lied. First I yelled at Jim, we voted you out of the church, which was a lie. It was out of anger, and I shouldn't have said it, and I know I shouldn't have said it, and then now I've been lying for years, saying I didn't say it. So now I have to confess to lying for 7 years, saying I didn't lie, and I didn't yell at Jim. I mean, golly, let's just get Aaron Gallagher and Charlie Colson on the stand, you know, business owner and airline pilot. I mean, they heard it. They heard me right when I left. Mark, I mean, and they both, it broke them. They're like, Jim, Mark said you are lying. You're saying Mark is lying. We know that we know that we know that we know that we know you would never lie, Jim. But what you're saying is that Mark is lying. And it destroyed relationships, destroyed friendships. Mark Ragsdale, your fucking prick shit has destroyed so many lives. And you sit up there on your high horse and keep preaching, and you think that that all these evil things that you did when you brought my wife and son to a battered women's shelter, you committed a felony. I believe. Some people say yes, some people say no. Doesn't matter, it was a crime. I mean, and what about what happened to my little boy while it was in there? My little boy should have never been put in a battered women's shelter. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. Maria's confessed. I never even as much as slapped her hand. Okay? Look at the qualifications for getting in a battered women's shelter. You have to be beaten over and over. You have to have severe fear of the man attacking you and killing you. It's a battered women's shelter for women who have been battered. Battered is not, I put her out of, she says, the worst thing Jimmy ever did is he pushed me out of bed one night. You know? I mean, that's the worst. Well, you don't qualify for a battered women's shelter. So Mark Ragsdale pulled strings, and him and Maria made up whatever stories to convince them that she should move in there. Lie to get them in there. Ask Dr. Buddy Morrow, Executive Director of CETA Rescue Mission. Ask Jim Fletcher, NASA design engineer, 33 years. His wife Darwin is Pastor Bob Morrell's secretary. Ask these people. And a few phone calls. Is everything Jim Butler's saying true? And did Mark Ragsdale do these things? Absolutely yes. I mean, come on. So anyways, you know, my book's about righteousness. It's my autobiography. I'm not going to lie in my book about autobiography without a lot of eyewitnesses when I point out what pastors have done. And I got so many eyewitnesses, and they can't dispute it, you know. So anyways, you know, when you only speak truth and you only preach truth and you teach your kids to preach truth, and you never lie. You just never lie unless it really, you need to lie to help somebody.